Okay, so today we're going to dive into a pretty wild idea from the 18th century. What if your own will, the very thing you use to make choices, isn't actually on your team? A Scottish theologian named Thomas Boston had this really stark, pretty uncompromising view of human nature that, honestly, it challenges everything we think we know about free will. So let's get into it and break down his argument.
Right off the bat, Boston does not pull any punches. He kicks things off with this incredibly dramatic image. Our will, our core decision maker, isn't just flawed, it's an active traitor. That's a powerful hook, and it really sets the stage for everything he's about to argue. So, this is the central claim. The human will is a traitor. And for Boston, this isn't just some dramatic metaphor. He's saying this is the literal state of humanity after the fall, which he believed was this huge foundational event that caused a complete flip in our inner allegiance. Now, what's so interesting here is how clearly this lays out the before and after. On one side, you have the original will, which Boston calls a holy right seed, something perfectly aligned with God. But then, you look at the other side. In its fallen state, it becomes a degenerate vine. It's not just imperfect, it's actively producing something corrupt, and it's ruled by a totally different power. You'd think being a traitor is bad enough, right? Well, according to Boston, the problem goes even deeper. He claims the will hasn't just switched sides, it's become completely paralyzed, utterly incapable of choosing real, spiritual good on its own. And his analogy for this is, wow, it's incredibly stark. He says the will isn't just sick or injured, it's dead. As in, it's just as incapable of choosing spiritual life as a corpse is of raising itself from the grave. In his view, it's totally trapped in the realm of evil with zero power to break free. So you might be wondering, well, how can that be? What about my conscience? I know right from wrong. Boston has an answer for that. He lays out this sort of cycle of failure. You can be enlightened, you can see what's good, your conscience can even go, yep, that's the right path. But he argues the will itself is chained, it's paralyzed by its own nature and just cannot comply. And so we end up going down the wrong path even when we know better. And just when you think it can't get any more intense, Boston adds another layer. And this one might be the most shocking. It's not just that we're incapable of choosing good. Boston says the fallen will has a deep-seated active aversion to it. We don't just fail to choose good. Part of us actually hates it. He uses this brilliant analogy to explain it. For the natural person, sin isn't just a mistake they make sometimes, it's their element. It's their water. Asking them to choose holiness is like asking a fish to come live on dry land. It feels unnatural, it feels unwanted, it feels like death. He even brings in an example from something as common as raising kids. Boston sees this natural rebellion in children, a pull towards what he calls sinful freedom, and he argues that trying to curb that impulse is actually harder than taming a wild animal. That's how deep-seated he thinks our resistance to holiness is. But this next one, this might be his most potent image of all for our natural state. He compares us to a wild donkey's colt, a creature that is just completely untamed, following its own whims. It's not just stubborn, it's fundamentally resistant to any kind of guidance. So when you pull all these observations together, Boston is basically saying, look at the evidence. The rebellion of a child, the feeling that religious duties are a drag, that inner pushback against truth. He says these aren't just isolated little flaws. They're all symptoms of the same root problem, a deep internal aversion to the very idea of good. Okay, so we've had the will as a traitor, paralyzed, and actively disliking good. We're now at the absolute climax of Boston's argument. He takes it one final massive step further. He claims the will is an active enemy of God in a state of direct hostility. And he's not just pulling this out of thin air, he's grounding it in theology, in texts like this one from Romans. The way Boston reads this, the natural or carnal human mind isn't just neutral or disobedient. It's in a state of active warfare against God. It doesn't submit to God's law, and, this is the key part, it cannot. And get this hostility isn't just a general rebellion. He argues it's a specific hatred for the very things that make God, well, God. The unholy will hates God's holiness. The guilty will hates his justice. The secretive will hates that he's all-seeing. It's like it secretly wishes God was just different, not so holy, not so just, not so all-knowing.
And he shows how this all plays out in a three-part rebellion against Christ. As a prophet, his teachings are rejected. As a priest, his free gift of salvation is rejected because we'd rather try to earn it ourselves. And as a king, his authority is rejected. In every single role, the natural will is basically screaming, we will not have this man to reign over us. Okay, so after hearing this incredibly bleak diagnosis, the big question is, what does it all mean? Where does this total corruption even come from? And is there any way out of it, according to this worldview? Let's see how Boston connects the dots.
For Boston, it all goes back to one place, the doctrine of original sin. The idea is that Adam acted as a representative for all of humanity. So when he sinned, he corrupted the very root of human nature. The root was poisoned, and so every branch that grew from it, that's every single one of us, is born with that same corrupted, venomous nature. And this, Boston argues, explains this fundamental tension we all feel. He says our corrupt nature is still wired for what he calls a covenant of works, this deep-down instinct that we have to earn our own salvation through our own efforts. It's all about self-reliance. And that's exactly why we instinctively fight against the covenant of grace, the idea of just receiving salvation as a free gift. Because accepting a gift like that means you first have to admit you're completely unable to save yourself. And if you follow his logic all the way through, you end up at this pretty staggering conclusion. If the problem isn't just a few bad choices, but a completely corrupted nature, a dead will, an aversion to good, active hostility to God, then no amount of self-help or trying harder is going to fix it. The only solution, in his view, has to be a total supernatural transformation, a new birth that's brought about by a power outside of ourselves. And so that's the provocative thought I want to leave you with. This idea of a bound will from Thomas Boston is in such sharp contrast to so many of our modern ideas of freedom, autonomy, and maybe the inherent goodness of people. It really forces you to ask, how does a perspective from centuries ago challenge what we believe today about what it means to be free? And what it really means to make a choice?